Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode on Laid Back the Atirazinga podcast. And our topic for this week is kindness is no weakness. And our guests for this week are Dr. Okoro-Ekechukwu and Rashikka, who are volunteers for AfriKindness, a non-profit organization that promotes acts of kindness amongst children and young adults. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hiya.
Yeah. Good to have you guys here. Thank you for honoring the invitation. Is this your first podcast?
Yes, it's my first podcast.
What about you,
first
Rashikka?
as well. Yeah.
Okay. So, do you guys have any expectations for today then?
I don't think I have any. I think it's just, like you said, it's a laid-back conversation. So we'll just talk about kindness in general and kind of highlight the work that AfriKindness do and how young people can get involved.
Okay. What about you, Rashikka?
So I think the topic is quite brilliant and it's needed for the current hour. So I'm quite excited to be a part of this podcast. So thank you for having us over.
Okay, you're welcome. But let's get right into it. Before we start, before we talk about anything else, we have to define what kindness is. So, what is kindness in your own words, and what does it really mean to be kind?
I mean, for me, when I think about kindness, the first word that jumped to me is consideration, being considerate of other people, and just kind of giving them assistance, or maybe being generous to them, or even, I say, giving them grace in the way that we relate to them, or in the way that we react to whatever they throw at us and things like that. But so kindness could come in a proactive form, but it could also be something that is reactive as well, in my own understanding.
Okay.
Rash, how about you?
Yeah, so I am very close to my grandpa, and kindness is a big deal in my family. So we were raised to be kind to everyone. And I think typically because of my line of work where we face service users, the first step to making them comfortable is kindness. And in friends and family, my way of practicing kindness is just listening, because sometimes people just want to be heard and they don't really want any kind of advice. So when someone's just, pouring their heart out, just listening to them is an act of kindness. That's something I try and practice every day. And like Grace said, I think basics of kindness is just being considerate to all living beings, regardless of whether they're human beings or animals, plants. Just being considerate and nice to other living beings and making the planet equal for all. So that's what my take on kindness is.
Okay. Yeah. But based on your definition, so one I can actually infer, like, kindness is when you do things you don't have to do but you just do it because it's good. Okay. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes like you said, you don't have to do it. Not just doing it because it's good, but doing it because you're thinking about the other person on the receiving end. Sometimes they need it. It's not every good thing that we have to do, because sometimes time, or you're not in the best frame of mind yourself and things like that. But if you put the other person first, then you're now putting yourself, not like you're neglecting yourself, but you're putting yourself behind, and you're kind of thinking about the impact that your acts of generosity or your acts of consideration will have on the other person. Like we say, kindness makes the world go around, and will definitely make this world a better place. So yeah, you don't have to do it, but it's very important to keep the world going.
Okay. But what differentiates, because I've seen people say there's a difference between kindness and niceness, being nice and being kind. They're two different things. So what's the difference between the two?
That's a tricky one. Rash, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go on?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I can go first. So I think being nice definitely may not necessarily mean having a value. For instance, if you see someone in the morning and you just give them a smile and you ask them if they're all right, it's not necessarily an act of kindness. It's just being nice and polite, just giving way for another person on the road. Things like that may be acts of being nice, and being kind basically adds some kind of value to the other person. For instance, if someone is just struggling with something and you offer some kind of assistance, it adds or brings some value to them, and in exchange to yourself because you've done something for them. So that would be my variation between niceness and kindness. I think kindness always has some after effect or value on the person receiving it, and definitely on the person giving it too. What about you, Grace?
I'll say so. The example that you gave, saying good morning to somebody in the morning, it's considered being nice. It's not necessarily kind because there's no value attached to it. And I'll say like the society expects you to be nice because if you're not nice, you're rude or something like that. So it's like niceness is almost like the societal norm or normal way that you were expected by the society to behave. But kindness, nobody expects. I mean, because we're trying to make the world a better place, so we're expecting that people are kinder and kinder, but it is not necessarily an expectation. It's something, kindness, I feel like, has some proactivity attached to it because it's something that you actually think about. In being kind to somebody, you're thinking, oh, how do I make this person better? How do I make that person's day better? Or how do I improve this difficult situation that this person is going through? And like you say, it also has a positive effect on both the receiver and the giver as well. While being nice is just something that you do, it's just something that you go by in life, you know. And I mean, I can say hello to somebody and I don't give any thought to it. What would translate to kindness is maybe checking up on them because they had told me previously that they've been going through a rough patch, and then I say, oh, how's that going? I hope it's improving. So that's like stepping away from niceness and just going further to be kind to them in kind of putting their feelings into consideration. But being nice is like, you know how sometimes in the British culture somebody just smiles at you and in less than 1 second that smile will disappear. That's just being nice, you know. You just do it and then that's it.
Yeah.
But being kind, you have to take that extra step, and there's a thought that go into it. And I'll say, yeah.
So if you say when it comes to kindness, we have to make extra efforts, would you now say that kindness does not actually come naturally to humankind?
Like Rash said, in her family, she's been raised to be kind. Yeah. So I say kindness is a learned behavior. And you know, there's how much a behavior is learned and it almost feels like it comes naturally to you. But I mean, normally as humans, I would say the natural instinct is to preserve yourself. Self-preservation is a natural instinct. Because I tell you what, sometimes kindness takes you out of your comfort zone, and sometimes kindness is actually difficult because you're going out of your way. You don't have to do it, but you're going out of your way to, you know, express kindness or consideration to the other person. So kindness is a learned behavior. I say it's like the chicken and the egg. It's a learned behavior, and then it almost feels like it's natural to you at some point. Yeah. Rash, how about you? What do you think?
I'm with you on that, Grace. Like, because there's a common phrase that says, "In a world where you can be anything, be kind," but it is not found everywhere as one might think it would be. And I think upbringing matters, and the kind of psychosocial upbringing is really important to a person being kind. For instance, when I moved to the UK, there's a common greeting of "you alright?" and I would just think people are actually asking me if I'm alright, and I would start responding, but then before I would answer, this person would have actually left the scene. That's just like it's just a greeting, so nobody actually means to ask if you are having a good day or whatever. So I think kindness comes with practice, and it's a very rewarding experience. And as human beings, like Grace said, we have self-preservation, and obviously we do things that give us a nice feeling. And once you learn that being kind gives you a nice feeling too, you start, you know, engaging in more acts of kindness. So there is a bit of self-preservation in acts of kindness too, because it makes you feel nice at the end of the day. But unless you've tried it, you're not going to know what kind of euphoria kindness brings. So I don't think kindness is spread everywhere, and it comes with just being taught and experiencing. Sometimes people start being kind because they've experienced a random act of kindness and they think, okay, now I should start doing this to someone.
Yeah, it's like the ripple effect you get from kindness. Really,
Yeah.
when you experience kindness around you, you're more than likely going to pick up that habit and just want to extend kindness. And when you've experienced it yourself as well, you're more than likely wanting to pay it forward.
Yeah, you're
Oh.
right.
Mm. But since you say kindness is a learned behavior, like for example, Rashi, your family taught you to be kind. So what do you think prevents other people from being kind? Is it that maybe in their own circle or in their own families growing up they were taught, maybe they weren't taught to be kind, or they saw people being mean to others? I don't know. Like, what do you think prevents people from being kind?
I feel like I'm sure all human beings are naturally inclined to being kind, but certain kind of adversities makes people choose themselves over the others. For instance, people who've had a traumatic past, let's say if a couple goes through a very traumatic experience and then they want to bring their child up with a lot of defense mechanisms. So there's extraordinary emphasis on, the world's a bad place, this could happen, so you need to keep yourself safe. So they're so keen about bringing their child up with the right kind of defense mechanisms that sometimes they miss out on imbuing kindness. And it's not necessarily coming from a malign place, but it's just because they've had an experience and they want to make sure the child doesn't go through the same thing. Now this child grows up to become a parent, and this child only knows what he's been taught as a child.
Yeah.
So when he becomes a parent, he goes on to teach the same thing, and it goes through generations. So I don't think it's anybody's real intent to be malign, but it's just certain kind of adversities. For instance, being an immigrant really brings about a lot of changes to your personality, and after being an immigrant, if you're going to have a child, you're going to teach your child a different way. So if I was going to have a child later, my child rearing behavior would be so different to what my mum did, because I'm not raising my child in India from where I am. I'm raising my child in the UK. So I think adversities and experiences kind of hone families and their relationship with kindness.
Oh, okay. So now, if we link it to what you guys do at AfriKindness, right? Anyway, before we go into that, can you tell us what AfriKindness is all about?
AfriKindness is actually a new charity. So it's a children's charity organization. And one of the key things they do is that they try and encourage and also create an enabling environment for children and young people to learn acts of kindness. Because like we say, kindness will always have a ripple effect. So why not inspire the young people to learn acts of kindness and how this kindness can impact their communities? I know that another aspect of AfriKindness is that they're trying to tackle the mental health of children and young people as a result of the effects that things like racial identity crisis or bullying or abuse in schools or mental health crisis, the effect that these different factors can have on the mental health of children and young people. And so it's coming together to say, why not use kindness as a way to kind of inspire people? So it almost sounds ironic if you're being bullied and somebody say, oh, come and let's go into the community and spread kindness. It sounds ironic because if you're being bullied, what you want really is revenge. You want to get back at that bully and teach them a lesson or something like that.
Yeah.
But AfriKindness come and say, oh, let's create initiatives that kind of promote kindness and spread it in the community. Because AfriKindness believe that way, there's always a ripple effect to kindness. And like Raj says, sometimes adversity make people to be unkind. People who are bullies, if you go underneath, there's some traumatic event or there's something that make them to be like that. It's not like they're just born being mean.
Most of the time, it's insecurity actually for kids. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, why not spread kindness in place of the bullying that you're receiving? And because we always believe that there will always be a ripple effect of kindness. Hopefully, you're hoping that in that community, the kindness that you share will get to the bully, and then the bully will decide to maybe be vulnerable enough to get help and get a cure to their behavior, or just be able to accept that kindness and have a change of heart, really. So that's what AfriKindness does, really. So they inspire, they educate, they empower the young people, and they advocate for them as well. The key thing is to make sure that the mental health and well-being of the children and young people are intact, to allow them to thrive in the society wherever they find themselves.
Okay. But is there any reason why Africa focused on children and young adults?
I'll come, and then Rash, you can contribute to this. So AfriKindness, one of the key focus of AfriKindness is on, so AfriKindness is a charity in the UK, obviously, and one of their key focus is on families who have migrated from Africa, for example, or from other Black nations, for example, into the UK. And because they understand that it could be a challenging behavior, it could be challenging because you're coming to an entirely new environment, and you're coming to an environment where you are different, and you're coming to an environment where the culture is a bit different from what you're used to, and that kind of exposes you to some of the adverse factors that we have mentioned. And you're coming to an environment where sometimes you begin to question your identity and things like that, because of some adverse behavior that you might encounter as you're trying to settle in. So AfriKindness have just taken it upon themselves to make sure that they help these families, with the focus being on the young people, to be able to just adjust and adapt into the environment where they come from, in a proactive way and also in a reactive way as well, with the approach of kindness. So the key thing is that AfriKindness uses kindness to kind of foster a society where everyone tolerates each other.
Interesting. But when you talk about kids and young adults, yeah, most of them they spend much of their time now out of their tablets and phones, and you realize you have a lot of people who are vile and rude online. How is there any incentive there for like anything AfriKindness is doing to make sure kids are protected from online bullying?
Yeah. Rash, do you want me to carry on?
Yeah, go on. I can add after that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So in AfriKindness we have different teams, really. So there's the research team, there's the parents team, there's the education bit, there's the environment bit, and the parents team, I'll say they are the very active team in AfriKindness. They hold webinars, they hold info sessions, and I think in the last 2 months, one of the topics of the webinars they had was on cyberbullying and just the effect and the impact that children spending so much time on the internet and not being properly supervised, the impact that can have on their mental health. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of bullying going on the internet as well. So it's very important that whatever it is that children are doing, that there's a responsible adult who supervises what they're doing, and just to make sure that they're safe on the internet there. So AfriKindness parents team hold monthly, I don't know if it's once a month or twice a month, they hold webinars to kind of support parents to be able to have the right tools to help their kids navigate the internet world.
Yeah. And I'm with Grace on that. And to kind of add to the former point that was raised about why children are the primary focus, I mean, I would think I was born in the 90s, and the kind of awareness we had around climate crisis, because there was so much information about it in schools and all that, I think that was so different to what my mum or any other generation preceding me would have had. So I think primary focus on children, for instance, like on global issues such as kindness, is mainly because you're rearing a whole new generation altogether. And if children are taught kindness, they're going to become adults who spread kindness. So I would think that's the main reason why AfriKindness focuses on children. And like Grace said, many aspects of cyberbullying are covered in AfriKindness as well. For instance, I remember when I was in high school, there was something called the Blue Whale Challenge, which was quite horrific because we were losing so many children in India because of an online trend. So things like that are prevented when you're taught kindness and when you're taught about awareness. AfriKindness recently published an article on how to raise a complaint, or how to speak about bullying, and we speak about racial identity in children, so they know that this is how I need to react if I face something online. So a diverse set of things are actually done by AfriKindness, and like Grace said, mainly targeted towards children and young people, because if we hone them with a certain kind of mindset at a young age, they're going to grow up to be empowered individuals who can keep themselves safe, but at the same time also be kind to everyone. So that's something I just wanted to add.
Okay.
Mm.
But how much do you think, since we are talking about kids now, because a lot of anything they experience right will affect the way they see the world going into adulthood and the rest of their lives. So how much do you think unkindness, not kindness now, unkindness can actually have on their mental health? How much impact it can have on their mental health?
Oh, I think it's enormous amount of impact that being unkind or receiving unkind behavior can have on their mental well-being. You find a lot of adults who are grown now and having to deal and navigate with a lot of issues that stemmed from childhood. Some adults now have come from childhood that have been very abusive, and it could be a cultural thing where it's just a cultural thing that unkind words are used on children, and they grow up to have like self-esteem issues, and they grow up to struggle with their confidence, not believing in themselves, and just feeling like they're worthless and feeling like they're failures. Or if they grew up in an environment where they've been compared so much to other people, they feel like they can never measure up, and that takes its toll on the mental health of it, because sometimes it just takes a very little trigger, to send somebody over the edge. And sometimes it could be a trigger that has nothing to do with the current situation. So for example, you are at work and maybe there's a performance, I don't know, there's some kind of performance review that's going on, or some kind of appraisal that's going on, and somebody just makes like a very, maybe they didn't intend it to be harmful, but that tiny comment could just trigger very traumatic experiences that somebody have had when they were a child. And that kind of brings up lots of unpleasant memories and things like that. So
The person,
it just
yeah.
so it's just, you'll just be surprised that sometimes, and sometimes because people don't think about some of these things and how it impacts them, so they've not really given time to think about the effect or how it's made them feel, or to even analyze how they felt around it. They've just had to go on with their lives, and then something completely unrelated will just dig up that memory. And it's not just that memory, it could just dig up your entire childhood and all the traumatic events that you've had to go through, and you find people just begin to struggle from nowhere. So unkindness is really it would really send somebody over the edge, and it just really has a very adverse effect on when they're adults. Really, I mean, it does have an adverse effect on children. Imagine children growing up in so much toxicity where they're being called names, or they're being talked down at because they're not very good in one thing or the other, or because they're not measuring up to their parents' expectations, or whatever it is their parents had planned for them and things like that. That child will just grow up feeling like a failure.
Yeah.
Even if maybe they have like a preferred thing that they want to do, or they feel like they're very good at, if their parents decide that, oh, that thing does not make sense, then they just don't even pursue what it is they feel like they're very good at, because they feel like as long as they're doing what their parents or whoever speaks into the mind of the child, it doesn't even have to be the parents, maybe their teachers, their friends, people they listen to, and people that they hold their words in esteem, whoever fits into the mind of that child. Every unkindness, every unkind word or unkind act or unkind behavior, and sometimes unkind behaviors are not even proactive behavior. Sometimes it's like it could be ignoring somebody. something as unkind as ignoring somebody could have an adverse effect on them, because they begin to question their sense of worth and all that while you're ignoring them. It's just a whole lot of impacts that unkindness can have on children, really. And it just goes on from when they're children into adulthood if it's not properly dealt with.
Yeah, I'm with Grace on that because I work in a secure settings and I work with offenders. And if you had listened to the stories of many of them, a simple act of kindness could have changed the course of lives for all the people who are, engaging in criminal activities. And if you listen, they would say things like, my parents were never there for me, they were never kind to me, I was a bully victim, so I grew up to become a bully. And even in any kind of other TV shows where you watch, if you see based on real life stories, all kinds of serious criminals or any kind of people who are acutely mentally ill are people who have not experienced kindness as a child. And I think kindness really contributes to the mental well-being and development of a child, and it kind of influences the whole course of life, from being law-abiding to different kinds of aspects, really. And it's such an important factor, but I feel like many people don't really regard it as something that has to be taught to children and that has to be told to them so that they feel empowered.
Yeah.
Okay. So something you guys said, yeah. I'm still like that though. I tell myself I'm thick-skinned. Things don't get to me, no matter what anybody says. But thinking about it now, everybody can be like me. Yeah.
That's a defense mechanism,
Why do you say it's a defense mechanism? I'm curious now.
Because sometimes I personally used to do that. So in my mind, I have this, how do I describe it? In my mind, I have this wall, and it's like unpleasant experiences and things I don't want to deal with, I throw them behind the wall.
Yeah.
And like I say to you, sometimes it could be the trigger that will bring those memories out are things that are unrelated to what you're even not directly related to what you're even going through. And so I feel like, there are these things that I've thrown behind there. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to, I just don't like it. So I don't want to deal with it. I throw it there. And it could go decades. When I mean decades, 20 years, not remembered. Yeah. So I feel like that is what I had done over the years to protect myself and to protect my mental space. So I can say that I'm very tough-skinned, like you say. But sometimes it's just something completely unrelated that will just trigger. And I know that something had happened recently and I was shocked to remember, or I was shocked that a memory that had been over 20 years
could trigger you like that. Yeah.
Because in my head, it is forgotten and it does not exist. Like in my head, it does not exist, not because, yes, I remember and I'm trying not to remember, but because I have completely forgotten about it. But you will just be surprised that something will happen and we'll just bring it up and we'll be like, wow. And you actually remember. And I am even shocked that I remember, but it's true because it's something that has happened. So I feel like being thick-skinned, it has its advantages and it has its disadvantages, because sometimes when you're in a very ravenous environment, you have to protect yourself and you have to, you have to thrive. So sometimes not letting things get to you is a protective mechanism. But sometimes I also feel like it's a defensive mechanism, because when things pile and pile and pile, there's definitely
lash out
one. There's going to be a breaking point at some point.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing, because I know I'm thick-skinned. I can take anything. But as I grow older, I realize sometimes instead of claiming that you are thick-skinned, you could have just called the person out on that thing immediately. We'll call it out. So that makes me think now, like, because you hear people telling you in the world children have to be thick-skinned, they don't need to be soft and sensitive. So how can we actually help kids to be thick-skinned, yes, to thrive in the world, but also know where to call out the person if the person is actually being rude or unkind to them? You see what I mean? Have a thick-skinned, though you can't be sensitive all the time, but have a thick-skinned, but also be bold enough and brave enough to call the person out.
Yeah. I think, like Grace said, it can be a defense mechanism, but it can also be a coping mechanism. Because one thing that everyone, all the successful people say, is never take anything too personally. But at the same time, I think children just need to learn that some things are valuable feedback, like constructive feedback. If it comes from a teacher about performance or something like that, those are things that they need to imbue. And then obviously there are criticisms that are unwarranted and unneeded, and you need to be able to call out that behavior. For instance, a few days back I was on a bus and I was talking on a very low decibel. It was not like I was creating any kind of nuisance, but I was talking in my native language, and then an English person, turns around and says, "You need to start talking in English." And I was taken aback, and normally I would have just skipped reacting, but I had to say, "You cannot say that to me, because that is not constructive feedback. If I'm talking on the phone at work and if my manager tells me don't talk on the phone at work, that is constructive feedback. But if someone on the bus is going to say speak in English and don't speak in your native language, that is far from being feedback. It's not like he's saying it's a nuisance, but he's actually saying
That's invading your privacy, actually.
yeah, exactly. So it's like literally the same thing happened, and I was quite appalled because I've seen a video like this about another person, and when it happened to me, I was on a call with my grandpa, and the first thing my grandpa told me was don't engage with him.
Yeah.
But I had to say it. But my grandpa naturally said, don't engage, you're in a foreign country, you don't want to get into a beef with someone. But I had to say, no, you cannot say that to me. So I think it's just finding that middle ground about having a defense mechanism and having a coping mechanism. So that's something I think would really help children if parents just taught them how to distinguish between someone who's looking out for them and someone who's actually putting them down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes I feel like it's a it's a really delicate fine line to be able to navigate, because you want your kids to be kind, you don't want them out there fighting, but sometimes you want them to be assertive at the same time, you want them to defend themselves. And like we say, sometimes, that person who you had to address whatever it is, because like Arisa said, sometimes people do things and you just don't want to engage in conflict, you're trying to shy away from conflict and you just let it slide.
Yeah.
Things like that. But part of social justice is that people know when something is wrong and they speak up against it.
Yeah.
So now that person, the next time they hear somebody speaking, because first of all, how did the person know that you were not speaking in English? English is not the only language that exists in the world. People communicate in different languages. Yes, you're in an English-speaking environment, but that does not mean that you have to speak only English. So I'm sure that person, if they want to do that the next time, they would remember what had happened, and it might make them to think about, should I do this or should I just keep quiet and mind my business? Because that's actually rude.
Very rude.
That's very rude in a public space. You shouldn't do that. And maybe it's somebody who's used to like bullying people just talking down at people and just feel like I can do this and get away with it. But you put them in their place. So next time, if they want to do something, it's good. They're going to think twice to say, oh, should I really do this? Yeah. So it's good to teach children to be kind, but at the same time, you also teach them to stand up against the wrong thing and let them know that it is okay for them to go and speak to a responsible adult when something is going on that they're not comfortable with, or when something is going on that is not right. So yeah, it's a delicate one, but yeah, I think children, as you're teaching them kindness on one hand, you should also teach them to stand against what's wrong on the other hand as well.
Yeah, because the reason I mention it is I'm this kind of person. If I don't like something, even though I'm thick-skinned, I don't care who you are. I'll walk up to you and tell you. The thing is, a lot of people don't, because the first thing that comes to their mind is, who are you to be this bold to tell me I'm wrong? You see what I mean? They know they're actually doing something to you, but sometimes because of the ego, they refuse to back down. Okay. Now, how can you? How can AfriKindness actually help the kids to actually differentiate between kindness and people-pleasing behavior? Because the people-pleasing behavior can actually make you to say, okay, do you know what? I don't want to get into trouble with this person now. You just back down. You see what I mean? Even though the person is actually being rude, the way the person was being rude to Rash, you see what I mean now? So How, because I know, being, if you are being nice and you are repressing, trying as much as possible to repress the anger, it hurts. And if you look it up, even research has showed it can link, it's linked to diseases like ALS. Funny.
Mm,
Yeah. So how can AfriKindness help kids to differentiate between kindness and people pleasing behaviors?
mm, yeah. What you said. I remember saying to one of my daughter's teacher once. I can't remember the scenario, what happened, but I remember making the statement. I said, "I'm not trying to raise a person pleasing child," and that was very funny. But it's right because you. I mean, when you're a people pleaser, people walk all over you.
Yeah.
And even though you think you're trying to escape conflict, but the impact that people walking all over you with no regard, no respect is worse than whatever it is you were running away from by avoiding conflict. So I think it's a fine balance. So for me, what happened with my kids there in school is that if they come and complain and say, "Oh, somebody's been mean to them," or somebody said something wrong to them, or something, the first question I ask is, "Have you told the teacher? Did you report to your teacher? Or did you speak to whoever, a responsible adult?" And if they say no, I make it a responsibility to ask them the next time to speak to their teacher. And then we follow it up. I used to say my husband is more confrontational because sometimes I don't want to get involved in conflict. And he said, "No, I send my child to school not to be bullied, not to be spoken to in a rude way or whatever it is." So he will go straight to the teacher and say, "This and this and this have happened. Deal with it, or I'll have to step in myself." So it gives that child a kind of safety net that when they come to you for something, because children need a safe space, whatever we do at the end of the day, they need a safe space. Because if they know that they have a safe space or they have somebody who listens to them, then they're able to take what.
Yeah, I agree. I agree because, like I said, I don't think it's right to raise people pleasing children with people pleasing behaviors, because in the process of trying to repress your anger, repress your hurt, you end up piling it up, and it can lead to diseases, like I mentioned. But so now, what strategies can we use now to teach kids to be themselves, be authentic, to set boundaries, and then learn the right time to say no? Because saying no does not mean that they won't be likable. Because some people are scared, oh, if they say no, oh, my friends will like me again, I won't be able to fit in. So how can we teach these children to be themselves, be authentic, and set the right boundaries and say no?
Yeah, I think we just lost Grace for a couple of minutes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know a call came in, so I think that
Yeah.
took it away.
That's okay, Grace. Do you want to jump in first? So he's just asked, how do we teach children the fine balance about being kind and at the same time being assertive when they're not, treated
Yeah,
right?
it's
Yeah.
being authentic, learning to say no. Because as children, remember when we were younger, most of us were so worried about losing our friends, trying to fit in. So we don't want to say no. Or if they tell you, you say yeah, because you don't want your friends. So, and children, because they're kids, they're trying as much as possible to mold their own character and personality at this point. So how can we actually help them to understand that it is okay to be themselves, to be authentic, and set boundaries and say no?
For me, I think it's what you feed your children. Remember that if you're a voice that they listen to, if you're a voice that is in their head, then it's very right that you're feeding them with the right thing. So you have to let them know that it's okay to be the only person doing the right thing. You don't have to join your friends to do the wrong thing. You don't have to join other people to do the wrong thing. And it's okay to be the only one to stand up to say, "No, this is wrong and this is not right." So it's just having to reinforce that. I think it's a very fine balance, because every child wants to have a friend. Peer pressure is real and they want to almost always be on the side of their peers. But I think we underestimate the fact that sometimes these children, they understand things, and if you speak to them and create scenarios and just bring it down to the way that they understand, say, yes, you want to be a part of a clique or you want to be a part of a group of friends, but this, if this is the wrong behavior, this is the effects that it has down the line. And so it just helps them to understand that yes, they can have friends, but they have to have qualities and they have to have values that they look out for in the kind of friends they want to keep as well. So that helps them just kind of create that fine balance where they're able to stand up against evil, but at the same time they're able to also understand that they have values that they have to preserve and they have to live by.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also important that children know that, for instance, if they're feeling bullied, rather than taking things into their own hands, going to the teacher and reporting it is again an act of kindness, yet being assertive.
Yeah.
So they are doing something about it, but at the same time, they're not just taking things into their own hands. So they need to be empowered with, approach your parents first, have a chat, and then approach your teachers next. So that this means that the child who receives bullying is not going to become a bully, but at the same time knows how to stand up for himself.
Yeah.
So I think that's again something that would help children strike a fine balance about doing the right things when they're in the receiving end of a bad act from another person.
Okay. But because of time, so let me ask you guys one last question. So could you guys tell us the last time you guys were kind to a stranger who was in no position to actually do anything for you?
What was the question?
I've been in. I don't know if this counts as act of kindness, but I've been in church this morning, and there've been like an event that have been running over some Sunday evenings, and what I had to do this afternoon is to cook for them. I don't know who they are. I don't know who's going to eat the food. They don't know who I am. I don't know if that counts as an act of kindness, but I know that it's very key to whatever it is they are going to have, the conversations they will have this afternoon and things like that. So I feel like it's an act of kindness and act of service as well to put myself forward to make a meal for them.
Okay. What about you?
Yeah, I think I've experienced quite a bit of kindness from strangers and me being kind to strangers. I mean, I would love to be kind to strangers, but I've not had many instances when I've done it. But there have been some really unique situations where some random people have come to help me. People who I least expected would come to, my aid have come to my aid. Not really strangers, but acquaintances. And on the road, sometimes I've been helped by strangers when I was a new driver. So I've been in receipt of that, and that really motivates me to be kind to strangers more often, because it's a really good feeling. Like you rightly said, there's nothing that the other person's going to return to you, but still you're doing something for someone and you go back home with a good aftertaste. So yeah, I think I should start being more kind to strangers.
Yeah. Anyway, before you guys go, if anyone wants to reach you guys, anyone is interested in AfriKindness, how can they reach you and get involved and be part of the community?
AfriKindness is online. So if you just go on Google and type AfriKindness, you will find the page there, and on there is the homepage, and there is also the contact us page. So if you go to the contact us page, you'll be able to either leave a question, or you leave your name, your email address, and whatever question you want to talk about, you send it, and there will be somebody who will come back to you. There's also like an email address, hello@afrikindness.org. There's also a phone number there where you can ask questions. But there are different social media platforms as well. There's Facebook, there's X, formerly Twitter, LinkedIn is there, there's WhatsApp, there's email. So there are different ways to contact AfriKindness. And once you make that first contact, then you have somebody to lead you to the right team that you're after.
Anyway, that's all the time we have for this week. Thank you so much, guys, for coming onto the show.
Thank you very much
for having us.
Yeah.
We did. Well, I did.
I did too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.